Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the Living on Lemonade podcast. To the Canadian listeners or viewers, happy Thanksgiving, as this will be aired on Thanksgiving Monday. I'm recording the day before, just kind of getting turned around. We snuck in one last little boat trip. We just went across the river to Port Huron and enjoyed, kind of walked around town. It was beautiful. It was about 20 degrees. So it was still like, it felt kind of like a summer night. And yeah, we checked out a couple places we'd never been to, and then came back yesterday and then drove down to see our boat friends. They had one last outing as well, local to them, but too far for us to go on our boat this time. So we just drove down for a visit, which was lovely. And kind of on the drive, I had another topic kind of lined up for this week, but then this curiosity that I was thinking about on the drive and just in general over the last day or so, I thought, well, this is more timely because it's related to Thanksgiving. So I'll record this one first, and then I'll record the other topic, which is also kind of timely to this week, but it won't be far off for next week. Now, as you know, and as I've talked about many times when I record around the holidays, it can be difficult. Grief can be very prevalent around this time, especially if it's right after you've lost a loved one. So if you've just lost someone and you are in the depths of it, um, if you're watching the YouTube video, I got my hands over my heart. I'm sending you so much love and comfort. Been there lots of times, and it's not easy. So just do make some time for yourself and make sure that you get some soul nourishment in there to help you just kind of navigate the grief, not to try and bypass or offset it because it's there. We can't really avoid it, but we can be gentle on ourselves. We can be kind to ourselves and meet ourselves where we're at to get through this season. Now, I every morning I pull an oracle card just as like a message of the day, and I just kind of ponder it as I'm living curiously. And the card I pulled today, or that flipped out of the deck, is called Not Forgotten. And I thought it was very timely for what I've been thinking about. The message on the card as well says, Messages from Spirit, Unbroken Connection. And the message really, at least in the book, it talks about how we long for our loved ones after they pass, and we can still kind of communicate or be in communication with them just through thinking about them, speaking to them in our mind or out loud, and asking them like, can you send me a sign? And you can be specific, and it's worked for me many, many times. And when you ask them a question, just get quiet and see if anything's pop in your head that bring you comfort. I know there's been times when I think about my dad and things pop into my head that I had forgotten about for many years, like things back in childhood, either sayings that he said or just some of his dadisms, really. And sometimes it just kind of takes me back, like aback, because it's something that wasn't available to me really in the front of my mind. So I just take that as a heart hug from him, and it gives me comfort. So that's one kind of thing. So I thought that that card kind of really tied in nicely with the complexity of what the holiday season can be for us. And the other thing I was thinking about is just how things have changed. And I was having a conversation with somebody that we met at a bar in Port Huron, and she was talking about her childhood and how a lot of people didn't get to have, like, don't relate to how she had her childhood and just like the Sunday dinners and going to church and just having like the big gatherings and stuff. And it made me kind of pause when I had quiet time and just reflect a little bit, even in that moment too, of, yeah, I did have that growing up. Now, things look very different now. For one, unfortunate events have happened within the family dynamic that has shifted it. So holidays don't look the same way. We don't have the big group gatherings. We kind of keep it small. Um, as you might know from previous episodes or just being in my world, I have a sister who lives out in BC. She gets home twice a year, but doesn't always land on a holiday. Sometimes I think last year she was home for Thanksgiving. And yeah, my other sister is currently out west working on her rental property. So she won't be home with us. Sometimes when she's here, she goes up to her friend's cottage. So and to kind of preface this, most of my childhood, like my sisters are 12 and 14 years older. So they moved out by the time I was about 6 years old, and they would just come back for visits, but they no longer lived in Ontario. My oldest sister moved back a few years ago, so she's kind of around. But historically, like with my upbringing, having holidays with my sisters was not a norm. It's lovely when we get to have them. It's a treat, but it was mostly like extended families, like my parents and I. And then after my dad left, he I didn't really see him. It's not like we really had family gatherings with like he and his like second wife and stuff. So the one blessing in my grief journey of losing him and the holidays being hard is I had already kind of calibrated or adjusted to holidays being without him. Now, over Christmas, we try and see him like right around there, but I wouldn't see him on Christmas Day or even really Boxing Day. I would sometimes join with my Aunt Shirley and Uncle Cam, and they'd invite me to join with their family. So I'd see my dad's side that way, but they just kind of had their own thing, and it was hard at the start, but it just kind of became a norm. So when he passed away, that at least was one less thing that I had to adjust to, because I for a decade, more than a decade, was used to not seeing him right on the holidays and having like the big dinners with him. Now, I think of other family members, like I mentioned, my Aunt Shirley and Uncle Cam, they were always the hosts. So that's been an adjustment. Now my Uncle Cam has been gone almost 5 years. The beginning of November will be 5 years, and my Aunt Shirley just passed 2 years. It's still kind of weird at the holidays because regardless of how long it'd been since we kind of chit-chatted or texted back and forth, guaranteed I would message her or like right around the holidays. And if I wasn't seeing her, like if I was working or whatever, I usually got an invite to kind of be the add-on to the family or whatever. And I would go, it would usually be the same day as my husband's family. So I would kind of do both. I would spend time with his family and then pop over to see my Aunt Shirley and my dad's side in the later in the evening, or however it turned out, or go there first, right? So I could do both. But guaranteed, if I didn't see them on that day, I would at least text and say hi to the family, give them all hugs for me, and happy Thanksgiving or happy Easter. So it is a little weird to not be sending those text messages this weekend. I'm gonna reach out to my cousins, of course. It's getting a little easier now that it's been 2 years. So if you're like fresh in it, it's hard. It's really hard. I'm sending you so much love. I hope you can feel some comfort, a little heart hug, but it gets easier. And I know that's not always like the easiest thing to hear or whatever. It doesn't mean that it goes away. It's just that sharpness of the pain and the almost that like when you want to grasp onto what you had, the sharpness starts to dull. It doesn't go away necessarily, but it doesn't feel as sharp. It doesn't feel as fresh. It doesn't feel as painful. And you start to kind of adjust to the new norm. And if I may impart a piece of wisdom that may be helpful for you, you can take it or you can leave it. Starting to I know I've talked about this before because it's been life-changing for me, but it's just a small shift. but starting to focus on things more as they are and not how you want them to be or how they were and how you still want them to be will help with that journey. Because when we cling to our ideals, what we think things should be, what we want things to be, we kind of anchor in on them, right? And the truth is it's not our reality anymore. So if we're clinging to something that no longer exists, it's keeping us stuck. So we can't be present in the present moment in our reality, and we can't move into our future if we're holding on to our past. It's a journey. I'm not saying it's easy. If you want to talk about or talk to someone who clung to ideals and should haves, and just ideals of, yeah, what things should be as a lifeline. I mean, I am that. I am her. Not so much anymore. I really have made a conscious effort and continue to, because sometimes I get caught up in it. It's natural, right? What we as humans like to stay in what feels comfortable, what feels safe. It's just part of our survival mechanism that's kind of driving the bus unless we wake up to it, become aware of it, and then can start to shift it. There's a whole lot of things, and maybe I'll do a course or maybe I'll do a class on our humanisms and why they hold us back and stuff, but that's one of those things. So it's very natural. There's no shame in the game. There's no need to make yourself wrong about it. It's just part of how we're wired. We want things to stay the same because it's safe and it helps us to survive, right? The reality is we can still be safe in the new. It just new things are always a threat to our amygdala and our human biology, our ego, essentially, right? But if you can start to, if this is something you want to try because you're tired of clinging to what has been and what you think should be, and it no longer is, and it's no longer serving you and it's holding you back, start to just really be present in the moment. Now, sometimes that just means literally getting back into your body because we can get our heads racing, right? Get back into your body so that you can be present in the moment and just look at things the way that they are and start to bring love to it. Knowing that where you've been has brought you to where you are. If it's a difficult circumstance, there's some love back on where you've been. It's not to say you can't grieve that things have changed, just don't live there forever, right? Because it'll hold you basically in the past. Now, for example, what I was thinking about on our drive back from the boat is my granny, who's 101, she, as we do as we age, she's slipping like physically, mentally, and there was, it was on the table of like her not even coming for Thanksgiving dinner, which to me is like, that is not that's like a no-go. She has to be there. So that's me kind of clinging to this ideal. But the way I look at it is like, as long as she's alive, we can get her in the house safely and stuff. Even if we can't have the same type of conversations or play the same games, cards and stuff like we used to, I know there's a comfort for her just being with family and having a little bit of that normalcy, even if it looks a little bit different in her kind of mental state. And then at the same moment had to remember, well, we can't put her at risk just because I want this ideal and I want her to be with our family, even though it's a small group. My husband will be there, of course, and my nephew who's 20. We've got some, strong arms that can help her, but still understanding that if it's not going to work, it's not going to work. So really what we have to do, and how my grandma kind of going on her journey with aging and physical degeneration and stuff like that, is it has been a practice for me in real time to practice meeting her where she's at. And I've talked about this in previous episodes at least once, and just assessing that day, that hour, that minute. How's she doing? How, like, what is she able to do today, and how are we able to support her? Maybe she doesn't end up at Thanksgiving dinner this year, and as sad as that would be, we can make her a plate and bring her some leftovers, or however that looks like. If we look at what just came to my mind is like a couple years ago, 2, 3 years ago, when we were in the depths of COVID, that wasn't even an option, and she was more than, able to come to the house, right? But, yeah, you make up a plate, you heat it up, you bring it over, and that's her dinner. You sit in her room with her, or whatever that looks like, or you bring her a piece of pie for dessert after her own dinner at the home. There's ways that we can just start to really look at, like, what is the reality? What is the actual situation happening here? And how can we just kind of adjust and shift our mindset a little bit so that even if it's like not ideal, it is what it is. And how can we really just embrace it and make the best of it in that moment? And like for my granny, it's just like making sure she's supported, making sure she's safe, making sure she's comfortable, and making sure she's happy. We'll see how this works out. We're just finishing up some stuff, getting turned around, then we'll head to my mom's, grab my mom's car because it's the easiest to put her in if she's ready to go for a little adventure. We'll check in with her, see how she's doing. Maybe she doesn't even want to go out today. And we'll see. We just kind of go with the flow, right? It's really a practice of just surrendering and just being present and assessing the situation as it is and just going with it in that moment and being okay with that. I mean, obviously we'd rather her be with us for Thanksgiving, but if it's really not in her best interest, and then that's okay. We will, like I said, we'll pivot and bring her some leftovers and still have a visit with her at the home before we go for dinner at my mom's, because it's just hard with the steps and stuff. She gets tired, right? She's 101. Her legs get tired and it gets harder, and she's got a bad knee, so it gets harder to go down those steps the later in the day it gets. So we have to be very mindful of that. And it seems that as the days and months go on, that timeline, that cusp of when she just starts really getting when she's like mentally tired, like she just kind of wants to go to bed. Physical body, I think we can all understand and relate to that, right? When we're just super tired, or like mentally, and we just want to go to bed, like our body just doesn't perform the same way, right? So, and that can be more detrimental for someone of her age, having to try and go down stairs, like stairs outside, and get like to her walker. We bring her walker to the stairs, we lift them down the stairs so it's ready for her, and then we have a railing, one on the other hand, but it's still like it becomes more of a thing the later in the day, and that later in the day is starting to get earlier in the day. So it's just kind of like assessing, like, where's she at today? Is she already kind of getting there? Maybe it wouldn't be the best idea. So anyway, rambling on, but that's kind of yeah, that's part of the message I wanted to give today, is just being present in what is. And like my Aunt Shirley used to say, this just popped in, like, we don't have to like it. She used to say, we don't have to like it, Lauren. And it's so true. We can still accept things for as they are and not love it, not like it, but still just go with the flow, and pivot and tweak, or adjust as needed. If you're missing a loved one, how can you honor them today and any day? But especially when families together, can you keep a chair for them at the table? You could set a place for them, you know, and just take a moment. You could say a prayer together as family and just honor your loved ones and share stories about them. Maybe you'll laugh till you cry. Maybe you just cry. But there's a release and there's a beauty in leaning into what's coming up emotionally, because as I teach and I've talked about, our emotions are our messengers, and if we have stuck emotions in our body that want to be let up, and a memory, a story brings it up, let those tears roll down your cheeks, give each other hugs, just embrace it, because those tears are the words that you can't say, and they're the love that's displaced with this loved one not being with you, at least not in the physical. But do something that would embrace their memory. Maybe they had a favorite dish that they made or they love to eat, and you can make that as keep that tradition. With my Aunt Shirley, I always think of her with cream puffs for Easter. So I make the cream puffs now. I've carried on that legacy, that tradition. So how can you still honor and hold space for the memory and the essence of that loved one? And don't worry about if it's emotional. That just means that you're in it and you're in that journey, and that's okay. That's totally, like, that's how it should be, in my opinion. I try not to say shoulds, but that's it's a normal, right? It's not unnormal. If you don't cry, also normal, right? There's a whole spectrum, but just lean into it. Lean into the love, lean into the emotions, be there for each other, and find a lovely way to pause. Maybe the cemetery is close by and you can just like pop by. I know not everyone is into that. I like to personally just take a moment and go to the graveside and just say hi. I know they're not there, like they're there physically, they're not there energetically, but it's like a tangible location, right? To take pause, even though I can do it anywhere. I have always It's always been part of my grief journey. I've always found comfort in actually going to the cemetery. And again, if that's not for you, that's okay. Don't do it. But if that just gives you that like physical place and that opportunity to take pause, you know, think of a couple memories or just the essence, lean into that and embrace it. And let it be a heart hug for you. So I'm going to end this episode. I hope everyone's doing okay. If you are celebrating Thanksgiving, I hope you have a lovely Thanksgiving, safe travels, wonderful time with your family, and remember those loved ones you're missing. I certainly will be. And we'll see you in the next episode. Bye, everyone.